A very good morning, students. In our previous class, we discussed the concept of exception handling in C++. In simple terms, I have explained what is exception and what is the purpose of handling those exceptions in our programming. With examples, we discussed this concept in our previous class. So basically, we said exception is nothing but a runtime error, and to handle these exceptions, we are making use of three different keywords like try, catch, and throw. So the purpose of using these three keywords: try in order to monitor the exception, catch in order to handle the exception, and throw in case if you want to throw an exception manually, we are making use of these three keywords. So after that, we also discussed the program examples for monitoring, for handling, as well as for throwing the exceptions manually. So there are a few other concepts which are related to this exception handling, like predefined exceptions and user-defined exceptions. Predefined exceptions are nothing but the exception classes or the exception categories. Those are already defined by the developers and maintained under your library files. So in order to make use of those exceptions, simply we have to include the corresponding library file into our program, and we can make use of all those predefined exceptions in our programming. So the list of all those predefined exceptions, you can check my notes. There are around 50 to 60 exception categories we have. Generally, nobody will ask these exception categories in your exams, but for your understanding, to know what are predefined exceptions, you can refer my notes. I have given a pictorial representation of all these classes, and all these classes they fall under our iostream.h header file only, under this std namespace, standard namespace, default namespace, what I mean to say. So in order to get an idea, you can refer that notes, and after that, creating the user defined exceptions or the exceptions which we want to create, uh, that concept also there in the notes. By seeing that it is a simple syntax in order to create a user defined exception, what syntax we have to follow. That general syntax you can easily get it. If you see the that notes, you can easily get it. So without that discussion, and hoping that you will get the clarity of these two concepts from the notes, because they are not of importance, that's why we are not discussing under the class. So if you have any sort of doubts, and if you need more knowledge on these exceptions, you can post me or you can ping me on WhatsApp, and I will try to clarify over there. Okay, so in today's class, we'll start the second part of your first unit. And as far as the entire syllabus is concerned, when we are talking about data structures, as far as the entire syllabus is concerned, only the first unit is very vast. It will take around 20 to 25 classes to complete, because we have to come across all the basics in C++ programming that we have already done. And your exception handling, that was the last concept which fall under the basics of C++. So from now on, whatever we are going to do, it is something like data structures. All these concepts fall under data structures. So C++ programming, we have completed the basics, and we are getting into the advanced concepts, and whatever concept implementation we will do over here, we have to do, or we are going to do in C++ only. So that is the reason why we paid more attention to the basics, and we had an in-depth idea of this C++ programming and how it is different from C programming, that also we discussed. So all the object-oriented programming concepts, whether it may be inheritance, whether it may be abstraction, whether it may be polymorphism, whether it may be encapsulation, all these, they are of importance. Because many times, if you see the previous year question papers, they are asking the questions. They are asking the direct questions from these concepts. Simply, you can expect whatever topics I have explained under polymorphism or under inheritance. Definitely, they will ask one question from that one. So, coming to this algorithms concept in your second part of the first unit, so we have to do the analysis of algorithms. So, analysis in the sense in terms of performance, how your algorithm is going to perform when implemented. So, so first of all, we have to know what is algorithm, because much of it, much of the idea about this algorithm we had in our first semester itself. So over here, will uh, I will give a brief idea of that same concept algorithm. Then we will compare this algorithm with program, and then we try to analyze the performance of algorithm. So how we are going to compare algorithms, when, because whenever we are going to get a problem statement, immediately what we will do, we will write the algorithm before writing the program. And this procedure we already discussed: first the algorithm, then the flow chart, and in between algorithm and flow chart, if you want to write pseudo code, that also you can write. And finally we will have the program, isn't it? Finally we'll have the program. So at the initial step itself, when you are writing the algorithm, at the initial step itself, we are going to analyze the performance of that algorithm. If we feel that the algorithm is an efficient one, then we will implement it with the help of program. Then we will implement it with the help of program. If you feel that the algorithm is inefficient and it is consuming a lot of computer resources, then immediately what we have to do, we have to withdraw that algorithm. We have to throw that algorithm out from our consideration. So generally, whenever we are giving a problem statement to a group of people, and their way of thinking about that problem is entirely independent of one and other, isn't it? So we have seen that concept by conducting an experiment. I have given a problem statement, a simple problem statement to you people in the first semester, and I told you to write the algorithm for that one. And we got 60 different algorithms from the class, because we had 60 students over there, isn't it? So out of these 60 algorithms, which one is an efficient one and which one is an inefficient one, how we are going to measure, that comes under the concept of performance analysis of an algorithm. So if you are able to scale the algorithm, if you are able to measure the algorithm, definitely you can say which algorithm is the good one and which algorithm is the bad one. That scaling, that measurement, we do it based on the performance of the algorithm only. So all those things we are going to study in this particular concept. So quickly we start the concept. Our concept is algorithms, and then we will do the performance analysis on those algorithms. So quickly we have to see the introduction. So the concept of an algorithm is the fundamental, isn't it? Fundamental to computer science. And why it is fundamental, we have a lot of reasons, isn't it? Because having an idea before we code anything, before we do on the computer anything, having it on the paper is the good idea, isn't it? Having it on the paper is the good idea. That idea on the paper is nothing but your algorithm. How you are going to solve the problem, we are noting down the complete procedure in a step by step manner. And that step by step procedure is nothing but your algorithm, isn't it? Whether you're developing a gaming application, or whether you're developing an application for a bank, or you're developing an application for an hospital, or you're developing an application for employee organization, whatever is our concern, simply what we have to do, we have to sketch it on a paper before the design or before the implementation. We have to sketch it on a paper. That sketch is nothing but your algorithm. Clear? That procedure is nothing but your algorithm. So uh, Algorithm, as you can see, the second point, algorithm is a step-by-step procedure for solving a computational problem, isn't it? It should be a computational. When we are talking about the computers, when we are talking about the programming languages, so basically we try to resolve the computational problems only. Okay, the problem which requires human effort, isn't it, that we can't do with the help of programming. Of course, nowadays with the help of machine learning or with the help of robotics, even we are solving those type of problems as well, isn't it? Robots can carry anything for you from one location to other location, or robots can build something for you, or robots can be used in the warfare. So different situations where we are using robots nowadays, isn't it? So in order to make that robot functioning, definitely we have to code something. So in that sense also, this coding or these algorithms are helping us to minimize the work in real time, isn't it? Basically what we are doing by coding means we are minimizing the effort of a human being, we are minimizing the work of a human being, isn't it? In that sense, these algorithms are going to help us. So quickly, the definition of an algorithm, it is a step-by-step procedure for solving a computational problem. Okay, which defines a set of instructions to be executed in a certain order to get the desired output. So whatever steps, whatever procedure we are writing inside the algorithm, it must be executed in an order. No random order we are going to follow. Suppose if you are writing the steps, step 1 to step 10 in the order, in that order only they have to be implemented on the computer. So basically the flow of execution or the flow of control of your program, it will be from top to down. That we already know. How you are writing the statements in the program, in that order only your execution of the program will happen, isn't it? If you're writing one statement first and the second statement next, then what will happen? Ultimately, the first statement will be considered by the compiler first, and then it will consider the second statement. Nowhere it is going to start from the end, or it will consider the second statement first, or the first statement second, isn't it? It will go. The flow will be from top to down. The flow will be in the order of how you are writing the statements in your program. So that algorithm, it has to be considered in an order, no random procedure. It should be an in order procedure. Then only we call it as an algorithm. So when we are seeing a program, it is also a step by step procedure for solving a problem, isn't it? It is also a step by step procedure for solving the given problem. Then what is the difference between algorithm and program? How these two things are different, independent to each other or dependent to each other, those things we have to analyze, and those things we have to consider. So quickly, if you see, yeah, when we do this algorithm, when we write this algorithm, in the sense at the time of designing the application, at the time of designing, isn't it? At design time we write the steps for solving the given problem. This is not the program, isn't it? Whatever steps we are writing at design time, not at the, see, for every application we are going to have two different phases. One is the design phase, where we are going to design the idea, and another one is the implementation phase, where we are going to code the actual software, where we are going to code the actual application. So two different stages: design stage and implementation. There are a lot of stages, isn't it? Requirements gathering states. All these stages we are going to study in software engineering. Okay, so till that time, you just simply remember there are two different stages for any application development process. Okay, one is the designing stage and the other one is implementation stage. At design stage, what we do, we write the algorithm or we design the algorithm on a paper. At implementation stage, what we do, we generally code the application, we write the programs for that application, the final stage we can say. After that, we will be having testing and deployment. Testing in the sense whether that program is giving the desired output or not, that we are going to test in the testing phase. And finally the deployment, in the sense delivering the product to the end user, delivering the product to the customer, we can say. So two important stages or two important phases, the design phase and the implementation phase of your software designing or software implementation. At design stage, we are writing the algorithm, and at implementation stage, we are coding the programs. So for writing the algorithm, we are not using any programming language. Simple English-like statements, and no need to follow any syntax also when you are writing the algorithm. Okay. So simple English-like statements without any syntax we use in order to write the algorithm. Okay. And moreover, the algorithms we are not writing on a computer, we are doing it on a paper, isn't it? We are doing the algorithms, we are doing it on a paper. Okay. So, and when we are writing these algorithms, do we have to follow any specification? Means no specification, no programming language used. Okay. And there is no compulsion that you have to use a specific natural language either. That means I have to write the algorithms only in English. It is not like that. Suppose if in your domain where you are going to work, if all the peoples will understand your native language, that is, if you are working in Hyderabad, then if all the people are understanding only Telugu, then definitely you have to write in Telugu. Or if all the people are understanding Urdu, then you have to write in Urdu. Or if all the people are understanding Hindi, then you have to write the algorithm in Hindi. It is not compulsory that you have to follow any specific programming language or natural language when you are writing the algorithm. So it is not language specific, either programming or natural. It is not language specific. You can write the algorithm in any natural language. Example, your English or your Urdu or your Telugu or Hindi, any natural language you can use in order to write the algorithm. So, yes, once the algorithm is written, now when we are talking about the consideration of programming language in order to implement that algorithm, is it again the program implementation? Is it language specific? Between the algorithm and program, is it language specific thing? Means no, not at all. An algorithm written in any language, it can be converted into a program using any programming language. What I mean to say is, you have written one algorithm using English. Let us assume you have written an algorithm using English. Now you want to convert that algorithm into program. Is it compulsory that you have to follow the C language? Means no. You can implement that algorithm using C, C++, Java, COBOL, Pascal, any language idea you have, any programming language idea you have in your mind, or any programming language you are good at, you can simply use that programming language and implement that algorithm into a computer code, into a programming code. So again, algorithm, writing the algorithm or designing the algorithm, it is independent to any programming language, any natural language. And writing the program or converting the algorithm into program, it is programming language independent. That means you can use any programming language in order to convert that program into a program, sorry, in order to convert that algorithm into a program. So if you see the differences between an algorithm and program in a more specific manner, where they are going to differ and where they have the similarities in between them, I have listed out over here. The differences between the algorithm and the program. Okay. So it is an important question. It is a 2 marks SAQ important question for your final exams, or maybe you can expect this question in your internals as well. The differences between a program and an algorithm. So algorithm, when we are writing at design time. So design time of your software development process, we are writing the algorithm. But whereas program at implementation time. Programs are written at implementation time and algorithms are written at design time. Okay. Then who is going to write this algorithm? Means any person with this specific domain knowledge. Let us assume you are developing a library application. Okay, you are developing a library application. How you are going to start and how you are going to implement and how you are going to stop. Who can give you the idea in a best way? In the sense, the librarian, isn't it? The librarian knows all the functionalities of the library. What kind of operations we are going to perform inside a library, only the librarian is the well aware person. So who can give you the best idea of about the library means the librarian itself. So is it compulsory that the librarian has to know the knowledge of programming languages in order to make you aware of the functioning of the library? No need, isn't it? It is not compulsory. It is not mandatory, or we can say simply no need. So the librarian who knows the native language or who knows the English language, he can explain the complete functioning of the library, or he can give you the idea on a paper how the library will function in a step by step manner to you, isn't it? So that step by step procedure what he has written on a paper, the functioning of the library is nothing but your algorithm, so who will write the algorithm here means, is it compulsory that only the programmers have to write the algorithm means? It is not compulsion. It is not compulsory. Any person with domain knowledge, he can write the algorithm. So in our case, the librarian is having the best domain knowledge about the library, isn't it? Best domain knowledge about the library. Then who can write? It is better if you give the algorithm writing to the librarian itself, because only he is having the best idea how the library will function. And if you are developing the application, only he can give you the best idea of the functioning of the library. So any person with domain knowledge, and if he knows any natural language, he can write the algorithm using that natural language. It is not compulsory that the programmer has to write the algorithm. Clear? Then when we are talking about the program, only programming or only the programmers, they can write the programs, because other people, they don't have the knowledge. Other people in the domain, they don't have the knowledge of programming language. Only the programmers, they do have the knowledge of programming languages. So they can narrate, they can code the programs. Algorithm writing job anybody can do, but program writing job only the programmers can do. Hope you got these two differences. The next thing is what medium or what platform we have to use in order to write the algorithm means anything. Any natural language can be used with minimal mathematical notations, because sometimes it is important to use the mathematical notations in the algorithm that we already know, we have practiced, we have done, we wrote a lot of algorithms in our first sem. So any lame person or any person with a natural language idea as well as with mathematical notations idea, he can write the algorithm. So any language can be used with minimal mathematical notations to write the algorithm. But whereas when we are writing the programs, they are specific to programming languages. Only the programming languages can be used in order to write the programs like your C, C++, Java. Okay, then these algorithms, when we are writing, we no need to bother about the memory of the computer, the processor of the computer, isn't it? The speed of the computer, all these things, because we are writing the algorithms on a paper and nowhere we are bothering about the computer's resources. So simply the algorithms, they are independent of software and of hardware of the computer. But when you are writing the program, we do all these things. We check what is the specification where we are installing our application after development. So definitely software and hardware dependent. Programs are software and hardware dependent. Okay. That software, it can be your operating system, and that hardware, it can be your processor. Because we have to think about these two things whenever we are downloading an application, installing an application, and running that application into our computer. The next thing, after writing the algorithm, yes, in order to get the best result from that algorithm, what we do means we will analyze. As I said, if you have 100 algorithms, to select the best one from that 100 algorithms, what we generally do means we will analyze, isn't it? We cannot make that algorithms functioning. We can only analyze, because there is no computer available where we can install the, I mean, where we can run this algorithm and check the performance of that algorithm, isn't it? So simply what we do the analysis. We do the analysis of the algorithms, performance analysis of the algorithms. But whereas programs, they can be tested for best results. We can't analyze. We don't analyze generally. What I mean to say, we don't analyze the programs. Rather, what we do, we test it for best results. Programs are tested, but algorithms are analyzed. Hopefully, you got the idea. So, the 5 different points I kept over here, which covers the differences between algorithm and program. Hopefully, you got the idea. So, quickly we see the different characteristics of an algorithm, because these are of important, and we have discussed these characteristics in your first sem as well. So, what are these characteristics? In the sense, your input, output, finiteness, definiteness, and effectiveness. These 5 are the characteristics or specifications. In more specific manner, we can say specifications of an algorithm. It is also an important question, a 2 marks question. Okay, write about the characteristics of an algorithm, or write about the specifications of an algorithm. In that way, they will frame the question. So the answer, it should it should summarize all these 5. Your every algorithm, it is going to have 0 or more inputs, isn't it? Must and should, it will take. Not always, we can say, but it, yeah, every algorithm, it will have either 0 or more inputs taken from a specified set of objects. Those objects, they can be your input devices, or they can be your what we call other resources. Okay, like your files, or like any sensors or something. Clear? So an algorithm, it is, there is no compulsion that every algorithm must have the input. It can even have no input. So I will give you a simple idea of 0 input algorithms. Okay, I will, yeah, that is nothing but, suppose if you are printing a simple statement on the screen, hello world, you are printing hello world program. Okay, does it take any input from the keyboard or from the other resources? No, it will not take. It will simply print whatever statement you are writing inside the program. That statement will be treated as an input to your program at the time of execution. So for that program, as we are not giving any input, the input will be 0. The input will be 0. So every algorithm, it will have either 0 or more inputs in our consideration. Okay, then output. Yes, unlike input, every algorithm must have 1 or more outputs. Okay, it should have, because if it is not generating any output, means it is a useless algorithm. I mean to say, I can say it is a useless algorithm. If it is not generating any output, or if it is not doing anything, then it is a useless algorithm, isn't it? So either printing hello world on the output screen, it is also a kind of output only. So every algorithm in our consideration, it will have 1 or more outputs. Okay, then we have the definiteness property, or definiteness characteristics. Each step in your algorithm, it should be precisely defined. Okay, it should be clear and unambiguous. Unambiguous when I'm saying it, clear when I'm saying it should not have any difficulties in understanding, or it should not have any difficulties in implementation. Suppose you're writing some very complex mathematical formulae inside your algorithm. Let us assume you're doing that. So then it will become very difficult for the programmer to understand that complex notation and to implement that complex notation. So that is the reason why each and every step that you are going to write inside the algorithm, it should be well defined. It should have the definiteness property. It should have the definiteness characteristic. So all the steps, are each step in your algorithm, it should be a well defined, or it should be precisely defined. Okay, so that it should be clear and unambiguous for the programmer. for the programmer. So next is finiteness. When you are starting an algorithm, it should end, it must and should end after some steps, after some number of steps. It should be the steps count in your algorithm, it should be finite. It should be finite. So it doesn't seem realistic that you have started writing an algorithm and you are keep on writing after 30 days of time as well, and the what we call the step count got increased up to some 1,000 lines. Writing such an algorithms in your domain, it is completely meaningless, or the people will consider such an algorithm as waste of time. Clear? The people will consider such an algorithm as waste of time. So whatever algorithm you are going to write, it should be finite. Finite in terms of steps in that algorithm. Always the algorithm must and should start at some point and it should end after some time or at some point. Otherwise, writing the algorithm, it is meaningless and it will be considered as waste of time. Then effectiveness. See, all the operations what you are going to perform inside your algorithm, they should be basic. They should be basic, that they can be done exactly and in a finite amount of time. Suppose if you're writing an algorithm, a particular step in your algorithm, it got started at some point of time and it is keep on taking time for its execution. It is taking more than the expected time for its execution. Such statement, it will not be considered as an effective statement. So all the statements, all these steps, whatever you are going to write inside your algorithm, or simply the entire algorithm, it should have the effectiveness property. Effectiveness in the sense, in order to perform a particular operation, that operation must be basic and it should complete in a finite amount of time. In a finite amount of time. It should not cross the limit or it should not go beyond the expected time. So that is the reason why all the operations, whatever we are going to use inside the algorithm, we try to minimize and we try to get at basic level only. Hope you got the idea. So these are some of the characteristics of an algorithm: your input, your output, your finiteness, your definiteness, and your effectiveness. These are some of the properties that we are expecting from an algorithm when we are writing. Hopefully you got the idea. So the next thing is how we are going to write the algorithm. Already we had much idea about the algorithm. So simply how we are going to write the algorithm means, any intelligible, understandable statement you can put inside the algorithm, as long as all the concerned parties they are understanding. Suppose in your domain, when you are developing an application, in your domain there is a collaboration of multiple people, isn't it? There is a collaborative work we will do. It is not something that only the client is visiting a single person and is expecting the entire application to be developed by that single person only. Then what will happen? A lot of problems will arise in such an application development. In such an application development, and your application will not become productive. So in order to make your application productive, the client, what he will do means, he will definitely approaches a company where multiple people are going to interact in order to develop that particular application. So where multiple people are collaborating in order to get a small job or in order to complete a job, there should be no misunderstanding between the parties, isn't it? There should be no misunderstanding between the parties. So in order to avoid such misunderstanding, what we do means, whatever algorithm we are going to write, we will make every step neat and clear, well defined, without any ambiguity. Okay. In short, we try to follow all the characteristics of an algorithm whenever we are writing a step. It should be understandable by all the concerned parties in your domain. All the concerned parties, whether programmers, non-programmers, customer, project manager, CEO of the company, or a lame person walking outside, even he should also understand the steps what you have written inside your algorithm. Hopefully you got the idea. Then, as I said, when we are writing the algorithm, no need to follow any programming language, syntax, or any specific natural language either. You can use any natural language when we are writing the what we call algorithm. So no need to follow any programming language syntax when we are writing the algorithm. And any language, any natural language can be used when we are writing the algorithm. Example, we make use of English with mathematical notations. We sometimes use mathematical notations also when we are writing the algorithm. So any natural language, any native language with mathematical notations can be used to write the algorithm. So uh, yeah, it is not compulsory that for a single given problem we will have only one single algorithm, isn't it? Only one single algorithm. For a single given problem, we can have n number of algorithms. We can have n number of algorithms. There comes the option, or there comes the necessity of comparing the algorithms for best and worst. Necessity of comparing the algorithms for best and worst. Hope you understood. So for a single given problem, we can have n number of algorithms, and in that, among that n algorithms, which one is good and which one is worst, definitely there should be a comparison. Definitely there should be a scaling. That scaling, that measurement we are going to do, we are going to give with the help of this performance analysis. Hope you understood. So here, a simple problem statement they have given, and we are having two different approaches for solving that same problem, and these two different approaches are nothing but two different algorithms. So design an algorithm to add two numbers and display the result. Design an algorithm to add two numbers and display the result. We have to design an algorithm according to the problem statement. That algorithm should add two numbers, and finally the result it has to display on the output screen. Okay, so here if you see, the first algorithm it is taking 7 steps, and the second algorithm it is taking only 5 steps, but both are doing my job. Both are solving the given problem statement. At some point both the algorithms are starting, okay, and it is they are declaring their concerned memory locations and storing the values into those memory locations, adding the values and storing the result into a third temporary memory location, and printing the result from that temporary memory location onto the output screen. So this is what both my algorithms are doing. uh, Definitely there should be a scaling between these two algorithms for good and bad, and for good and worst, best and worst we can say. So that scaling, how we do it, is too early to explain. So we will go step by step and we will do the analysis. So after that you will become aware of comparing these two algorithms for best and for worst. Okay, which one is good and which one is best, or both are having the same level of performance. All those things, after learning how to do the performance analysis of an algorithm, you will understand. So quickly go to the next slide. So here we start the concept of performance analysis. Okay, so the most important attribute of any program that you have written is nothing but its correctness, whether it is giving the desired result or not, whether it is giving the desired output or not. So it is the most important criterion or most important aspect we can say of a program. It should be correct and it should perform the intended task for what you are writing that program. Whatever intentions you have in your mind, whether when you are writing that program, it should satisfy all those intentions. Then only the development or the implementation of that program is a what we call worthy thing. Otherwise it will become a useless thing, isn't it? So uh, even if you have written the correct program, it is of little use if it is taking, or if it is consuming more computer memory, and if it is taking more CPU time to execute, isn't it? You're writing a program. Of course, it is giving the desired output. It is giving the desired output, but it is of no use, or if it is of minimum use, if it is consuming more computer memory and more processor time, isn't it? Yes, the next thing is the word performance. Program performance is used to refer the memory and time requirements. When we are saying performance of a program, so performance of an algorithm definitely we will calculate, but performance of a program, of course, from where we are getting this program, from the algorithm only we are getting this program. So if your algorithm is not efficient, how come the program is going to be efficient, isn't it? So when we are doing the performance analysis of an algorithm or of a program, what we do means we will check for space and time consumptions. How the algorithm is consuming the space, I mean how many variables it is declaring, and how it is executing, how much time it is taking to execute. That time also we are going to check. How much memory it is consuming and how much time it is consuming. Basically, these two things we are going to check when we are checking the performance of a program or checking the performance of an algorithm. So the word program performance is used to refer the memory and time requirements of a program, basically. In straight approach, program performance means the amount of computer memory and time needed to run that program. How much memory it needs in order to execute, how much time it needs in order to execute. These two things are of our concern. Okay, these two things are of our concern. So basically, in order to do these type of analysis, there are two approaches. So I will give one simple example so that you will understand the need, the importance, and uh, these approaches of doing the analysis of an algorithm. Why we have to do the analysis, why we have to do the performance comparison, and why we have to determine, and what approaches we have to determine all these things. In one simple example I will explain. So let us assume that I want to buy a mobile phone from the market. Of course, we have a lot of variants. We do have a lot of brands readily available in the market, and they have a lot of variants, lot of models uh, inside the market, isn't it? So basically, uh, we will select, first of all we will select the best models which do fit under our budget, isn't it? Let us suppose I want to buy a mobile with 20,000 rupees. So I will select all the brands and all the best models which fits under my budget, under this 20,000. So next thing, immediately what I have to do, I have to check among all those models, I have to check for the best model, isn't it? Among all those models, I have to check for the best models. So all the selected models, they are falling under 20,000 budget. So now what I have to do, I have to check for the performance. So which mobile model is going to perform best? I will select that model and I will purchase that model, isn't it? It is what we call the human behavior, or the what we call the uh, truth in the nature, isn't it? Always will select the best. So definitely, how we are going to compare all these models means we'll check the performance based on the memory and based on the time, how fast the mobile is and how much internal memory we do have into that mobile, isn't it? Fastness, that is nothing but your processor. Memory, that is nothing but your RAM. These two things, these two aspects we'll check before purchasing that mobile. Rest of all, your battery life, all those things, they will also come under consideration, but they are of less important. They are of less important. So there are two approaches to determine the performance of a algorithm, or performance of a program or algorithm. Okay, so there are two approaches. One is the analytical way, and the other one is experimental way. So two approaches, way how we are going to analyze the performance. So analytical way and experimental way. So in our example, analytical way in the sense checking their specifications, how much RAM, how much what processor, how much RAM, how many cameras, checking all these, whether it is having Bluetooth, 4G, 5G, isn't it? Dual SIM, all these, checking all these things are nothing but your analytical way of checking the performance. Analytical way of checking the performance. And the second thing, experimental, how good it is when you are opening an application, when you are taking the picture, how the quality of the picture is differing, audio quality, when you are making a call quality, battery backup, all these things are experimental analysis. Okay, experimental way, we can say analytical way and experimental way. Analytical way, we simply compare the specifications. Let us assume two models, one from Samsung and other one from Apple. Two models we have, and the first model, it is having same RAM, same processor in Samsung, and same RAM, same processor in Apple as well. So having the same specifications is analytical way of comparison. Analytical way of comparison. Does it mean that both the mobiles are going to perform in the same way? No, it is, there is no guarantee, isn't it? One mobile may perform good and the other mobile may perform bad. So that we know already. If 2 GB RAM, quad core processor in Samsung, ultimately you will have degraded performance when you compared with Apple. Apple, it is going to have best performance even with 2 GB RAM and quad core processor. That we already know, isn't it? So checking the performance level, opening the applications, taking the pictures, checking the battery backup, the performances, that is nothing but experimental way. And simply checking the specifications, that is analytical way of comparison. So one is analytical, where analytical methods are used to analyze the performance. We are not doing any experiments. Simply we are checking the specifications and we are doing the comparisons. That is analytical way. Second is the experimental, where performance is measured by conducting experiments. Means we'll install PUBG in Apple Mobile and we'll install PUBG in Samsung Mobile also, and we'll open the application and we'll check which mobile is opening fast. Apple is opening or Samsung is opening. In that way, we are doing the comparison. Experimental way. So these two are the approaches of comparing the algorithms or programs, analytical way and experimental way. So how to do the analysis? Yeah, we have different criterions. The first criterion is the time, isn't it? The algorithm must be time efficient, which means it should be faster. To analyze process, or in the analysis process of an algorithm, the time taken by the algorithm is measured, whether it is faster or it is taking too much time to complete. So these two things we will check, whether the algorithm is simple and faster or complicated and consuming more time. So in that way we will do the time comparison of algorithms. The time consumed by the algorithm, see, whenever we are doing the comparison, whenever we are analyzing the time, will not start a stopwatch and we'll check for the execution of that algorithm. Basically, whenever we are talking about algorithm, we don't have any computer so far which can run and give the output from the algorithm, isn't it? So generally, we don't do the time calculation. Time calculation not in the form of your watch time or clock time. We do get the time calculation in terms of a function, in terms of a mathematical function. Okay, in terms of mathematical functions, we'll get the time analysis. So first we have to do the time analysis of an algorithm. If an algorithm is consuming less time, we consider that algorithm as an efficient one when compared with the other algorithm which is taking more time in your analysis process. Hopefully you understood. So generally, remember, the time consumed by the algorithm will be in the form of a function, time function. Generally, we will get functions and not in the form of a watch or clock time. Okay, don't expect that we are going to get some 15 minutes of time for one algorithm and 16 minutes of time for another algorithm. So we do the comparison. Here it is taking 15 minutes, here it is taking 16 minutes. So 15 minutes 50-minute algorithm is an efficient one and 16-minute algorithm is an inefficient one. We don't do such a comparison and will not get any such timing in our calculation. Generally, we do get some functions, mathematical functions. Based on that function comparisons, will estimate the algorithm's performance. Will estimate the algorithm performance. So the first function what we are going to get is the time function, and the second one is space. Generally, whenever we are writing an algorithm, our program, it do consume a lot of memory, computer's memory. So based on the computer memory consumption also, we can check the performance of the algorithm. So the algorithm will be converted into programs and going to be executed on a computer. One has to know how much memory space it is going to consume during its execution. So ultimately, at the early stage, that is nothing but at your algorithm stage only, we have to know how much memory the algorithm is going to consume when it is going to be converted as a program. Okay, so the network consumption. So if your application, whatever application you are developing, if it is a network application and if it is consuming the network resources like sending and receiving the messages uh, between the computers, so if it is such an application, definitely we have to calculate how much network resources the algorithm is going to consume. That calculation is also important. That calculation is also a criterion of consideration. Okay, so next is the power consumption. So generally nowadays in modern computing world, many applications we are developing for handheld devices. Handheld devices are nothing but your laptops, your tablets, your mobile phones, isn't it? Where the power consumption is major criterion, one of the major criterion, isn't it? So it was the time in olden days where power consumption was not a criterion, because uh, generally we are going to run all the applications in a desktop computer only, in a PC only, and PC we do provide uninterrupted power supply, and based on that uninterrupted power supply only, UPS we call it as uninterrupted power supply, that is UPS. So based on that UPS performance only, we are going to develop the applications. We have developed the applications, but nowadays in modern computing world, many applications what we are going to develop, they run on palm devices, they run on handheld devices. Those are nothing but your portable devices like mobile phones, tablets, and laptops, where battery or the power consumption is a major issue. So if you are developing an application which is consuming the entire mobile's battery in, let us assume, in 5 minutes, is it an good application? No, of course it is a bad application. So definitely if your application falls under this category, if your application whatever you are going to develop, you are developing for mobile phones and tablets, definitely you have to do the power consumption analysis as well. Hopefully you understood. Next is the CPU registers. Ultimately your processor, the end point of your application, the end point where your program is going to be executed, where your program is going to be converted into a form from which you are expecting the desired result, from which you are expecting the desired result. So that is nothing but your processor. Inside the processor only, your program will be converted into an output friendly entity. From there only we are getting the output. From the processor only we are getting the output. So the CPU, it will also have some registers into it. These registers are nothing but memory locations. The memory locations inside the CPU, we call them as registers, CPU registers. So if an algorithm it is consuming more CPU registers, we consider that algorithm as an inefficient algorithm. So the consumption of CPU registers, it should be minimum. Okay, so all these things, not only the time, not only the space, but also the network consumption, power consumption, CPU register consumption, all these things we have to look for an algorithm. But in our analysis, in our algorithm analysis, we do only the first two. And at some point, we do only the time analysis. We'll not even look at space analysis either. So the two important aspects which we are going to measure for the performance of an algorithm is nothing but your time complexity and the space complexity. Only those two we are going to measure. Measuring time and space complexities. Time analysis or time complexity analysis, every simple statement. Whenever we are writing the statements in our program or in our algorithm, steps in our algorithm, every simple statements, if it is not nested, nesting in the sense, if you're not using any conditions, there is nothing but if else statements, and if you're not using any loops are nothing but repetition. If you're not using any control structures and any repetitive statements, repetitive control statements, then a simple statement in an algorithm will take only 1 unit of time for its execution. It is an important consideration. A simple statement in your algorithm, it will consume only 1 unit of time. If an algorithm is calling any other algorithm, that is nothing but recursive approach. If an algorithm is calling other algorithms, or if an algorithm is calling the same algorithm, generally what we do means we'll do the internal analysis as well. So again, we have to go into that algorithm calling and we have to do the analysis of that internal algorithm as well. So every simple statement in the algorithm will consume only 1 unit of time. So generally we do get the time in units. Okay. No specific measurement, no specific units we have for this analysis. We do have functions. We do get the result in terms of functions, and we compare the functions based on some notations. We compare these functions, and which the bigger function we will leave it, and the smaller function we will consider in case of time and in case of space. You will very soon you will understand how we will do that type of analysis. So time analysis, every simple statement in your algorithm will consume 1 unit of time. Based on this consideration only, we are going to calculate the time function. If an algorithm is calling another algorithm, or if an algorithm is calling a recursive algorithm, that is nothing but if an algorithm is calling itself, then we have to do the internal analysis of as well. The called functions or the called algorithms analysis as well. So that is time analysis. Space analysis, every simple variable in your algorithm is going to consume 1 word of memory. So this is an important consideration once again, a standard once again. Every simple variable, every simple declared variable in your algorithm will consume 1 word of memory. If it is a complex variable like your array, if it is a complex variable like your array, so we have to count the number of variables inside that array. We have to count the number of variables inside that array. So in that sense, we are going to calculate the total number of memory locations or total number of variables inside your algorithm. Again, it is also a function of a mathematical function only. It is also a function only. So I have taken a simple algorithm over here for swapping two numbers. So over here, what this algorithm is doing, you simply see, I will take the pointer. So this algorithm swap a comma b. It is swapping two numbers. As I said, there is no specific notation to write the algorithm. You can even write the algorithm like this also. If it is understandable by your domain, you no need to bother about the algorithm, whether you have written the algorithm properly or not, because there is no specific syntax to write the algorithm. So it is more like a program only, whatever I have written. So swap a comma b. My intention, I want to swap these two numbers. So for that sake, I'm using this temporary variable, and inside this temporary variable, I'm storing a value. Then inside a, I'm storing b value. And then inside b, from this temporary variable, I'm taking the a value and putting back into this b value. So in this way, I'm swapping these two numbers. So these three statements will do my job. These three statements will do my job. So now if you do the analysis, how many times this logic will be considered by the control of your program? So does this statement gets executed more than one time? No, it will be executed only one time. Okay, So one time. Does this statement, it is going to be executed more than one time? No. Again, it will also one time. It will also one time. Like this, how many statements I have in my program? Three statements, and no repetition over here. These statements, three statements, from the beginning of the program till the end of the program, or from the beginning of the algorithm till the end of the algorithm, they will get executed only one time. They will get executed only one time. So now, how many, so in order to execute this particular statement, I need 1 unit of time. This is units, whatever I have specified over here, these are units. So 1 unit of time. And in order to execute this particular statement, I need one more unit of time. For this statement, another unit of time. So totally how many units I need? 3 units. So my function equals to whatever time function I am getting it is 3 units. It is 3 units. So if you see the function inside mathematics, if you try to put the notation on this function, because these are notations, very soon you will study about these notations also. This is big O notation. Generally we call this as big O notations. We have three different types of notations: big O notation, big omega notation, and theta notation. Asymptotic notations we call them as. It is something more like related to your mathematics functions concept, under your mathematics functions concept. So how many units of time it is requiring? 3 units of time. So if you write it as a function, and if you use the notation on this function, it will be order of 1. It will be order of 1. It is a constant value. As it is a constant value, we are getting order of 1. If you see the space complexity of this algorithm, how many variables we are using in this algorithm? I am using one variable temp. I am using another variable a. I am using a third variable b. So totally how many variables? 3 variables. Yeah, this is reutilization, isn't it? Whatever variable we have declared as a, that we are reusing, and whatever variable we have declared as b, that we are reusing. Temp also we are reusing. So we will not consider second time. Whatever declarations we have do, we consider only one time. So how many variables? A, how much memory it will consume, because it is a normal variable, only one word of memory. Okay, B, as it is also a normal variable, only one word of memory. Temp, it is also a normal variable, so one word of memory. So totally 3 words. How many words it is considering? 3 words. Again, my space function s of n, it is a constant value. S of n is a constant value. So what is my notation? Order of 1 only. Order of 1 only. So in this way, we measure the time and space complexities of a algorithm. Time and space complexities of an algorithm. We do the analysis in more depth way in our next class. So before going to that, before stopping this video, we do study about recursive algorithm. Recursive means if an algorithm, if it is calling itself, we call it as a recursive algorithm, isn't it? Recursion is a process in which a function calls itself. So this is a direct algorithm, or they are done, or they may call other functions that again invoke the calling function. This is indirect recursion. Direct recursion, indirect recursion. Direct recursion in the sense I will show you here itself. So what is direct recursion? You are writing the definition of add function. You're writing the definition of add function, and in that definition again you are calling the add function. So this is direct recursion. This is direct recursion. Then what is indirect recursion means? You are calling the add function, and this add function, it is invoking some fun function. Okay, and if you see the fun function, and this fun function, yeah, this, I think this is not visible to you, so I will write this over here. This fun function, what it is doing? Inside fun, you are having the recursion. Here you have the recursion like this. So this type of, you're invoking the add function, you're writing the add function. Inside add function you have the call to fun function, and that fun function is a recursive function. That fun function is a recursive function. This type of thing is indirect recursion. This type of thing is an indirect recursion, and this is add. You are invoking the add, and in that add you have the recursive call. This is direct recursion. This is direct recursion. So this is something about recursive algorithms. Yes, what we do generally with the process of recursion means in every step of recursion we try to minimize the number of the size of the input. We can say in every recursive step we are trying to minimize the um, input size. So over here you can understand that one. I am calling the factorial function, as you can see over here. I am calling the factorial function, and if you see the definition of that factorial function, here inside this definition, once again I am calling the factorial function but with a minimized output, but with a minimized input. So here the input is n, but now I made it as n minus 1. So of course, ultimately what I am doing, I am decrementing the count value, n value by 1. So here in every level, at each level, what will happen? The n value gets decremented. So this is the recursive approach. In recursive approach, what we do means we call the same function again and again, but at every call, what we do means we try to minimize the input so as to make the algorithm finite. So as to make the algorithm finite. Otherwise, what will happen? Your algorithm will enter into infinite, and it is not a suitable approach, isn't it? Selecting the infinite algorithm is not the suitable approach. So what we do in the recursive approach means we call the same function again and again, but at each level of call, at each call, we try to minimize the input size. We try to minimize the input size simply by reducing 1 or reducing 2 according to our requirement. We do that thing. So if you see in this example where we are finding the factorial of a given number, first initially we are passing n as a parameter to this factorial function. Then when we are calling that same factorial function recursively, what we are doing, we are reducing the value by 1. We are reducing the input value by 1 so as at some point that n value will become 0 and my function will return, isn't it? N value will become 1 and my function will return. My function will return, or my function will become, my recursive function, my algorithm, recursive algorithm will become finite, isn't it? Otherwise, without that reduction, my algorithm will become infinite. Without that reduction, without that input reduction, my algorithm will become infinite. With this reduction, my algorithm is becoming finite. Okay, so in our next video, we try to analyze the algorithms in more detailed way, and we also see the notations. The notations for that mathematical functions, whatever mathematical functions we are getting, time function, space function, when we are doing the analysis, how these notations are helpful in order to do the comparison between the functions. Now our role is not between the algorithms. For every algorithm, when you do the time analysis, you will get the function. When you do the space analysis, you will get the function, some mathematical function. So in for multiple algorithms, if you do the same, for multiple algorithms, if you do the time analysis, you will get multiple time functions, isn't it? Multiple time functions, multiple time mathematical functions. Now our job is we have to do the comparison between those mathematical functions. With the help of these notations, we are going to do the mathematical comparisons, mathematical function comparisons. Hope you understood. See, generally we have algorithm 1. Let us assume we have algorithm 1. Here I am writing that one. So what we have? We have an algorithm 1. Okay. So in this, I have another algorithm 2. Both the algorithms, both of my algorithms, they are solving the same problem. Same problem. Okay. So let us assume finding the factorial of a given number. Finding the factorial of a given number is my problem statement, and I got two algorithms for that same problem statement. So now what I have to do, what my job is, I have to do the comparison between this algorithm and this algorithm, and I have to select the best one. I have to select the best one for implementation. So that is my job. So what I will do, I will do the time analysis, isn't it? I will do the time analysis. So what I will get some time function, that is f of n. F of n I will get. Then I will do the space analysis. So after space analysis, I will get s of n. This f of n and s of n for algorithm 1 I got. I will do the same thing. I will do the time analysis to get the f of n for this algorithm 2. Again, space analysis to get the s of n, like this. So now, what is my job? Yeah, doing the analysis of algorithm is over. I got the time function, I got the space function for both my algorithms. Now my job is to compare these functions. To compare these functions. Because now we got some scale, now we got some measurement. Isn't it? Previously, comparing the algorithm is a tedious job. So what we have done, we got the time function, we got the space function for the algorithms. Now our job is to compare these functions. Let us assume if f of n of algorithm 1, this is algorithm 1. Okay, here I will write ALG1. ALG1's f of n is greater than ALG2's f of n. That means it is consuming more time than this f of n. So then which one is an effective one? This one is an effective one. In that sense, we'll do the analysis. So to do this comparison, with which function is greater, which function is lesser, we go for asymptotic notations. What we do? In order to do that one, we go for asymptotic notations. Asymptotic notations. And these asymptotic notations we'll discuss in our next class, hopefully. And with that, we will conclude our first unit. This is the last point that we have to discuss in your first unit. So the asymptotic notations are nothing but your big O notation, your big omega notation, and theta notation. These three things we have to discuss: big O notation, omega notation, theta notation. So these notations are helpful in doing the comparison between the functions, because whenever we are doing the analysis of algorithms, we are getting the time function and space functions. We are getting the mathematical functions. So what we have to do, we have to compare these mathematical functions. And how we are going to do that comparison means with the help of these asymptotic notations only. Clear? Hope you got some idea. Yeah, we also compare the space analysis as well. So we compare the space function of algorithm 1, okay, s of n, and then we'll compare the algorithm 1, algorithm 2, s of n, like this. Based on this comparison, we select which algorithm is best and which algorithm is worst, like that. Clear? Hopefully you got some idea. In our next class, we'll get more idea on this analysis, algorithm analysis, because I will take more examples and I solving is nothing but I try to find out the functions, time and space functions for those algorithms, and ultimately after finding the time and space functions, we will do the measuring of those algorithms. We'll do the comparison of those algorithms, hopefully. So till that point, with this understanding, I'm concluding this class. Try to subscribe my channel as much as possible, and if you like this video, try to like the video whenever it is possible. And if you have any kind of doubts, do post in the comment section, and you can even post me on my personal WhatsApp. Okay, thank you, students.